Bella Swan believed love was meant to last forever until it didn't. Left behind with 2 babies and a heart full of unanswered questions, she learned that survival doesn't come from magic or immortality, but from love. Alone in a town haunted by memories, Bella chose her children over everything else. This is the story of a mother who lost everything, and still found the strength to keep going. Bella's pa, Edward, my one true love, was standing right in front of me. "Why you don't want me?" I asked, stuttering each word. His face twisted into a pained expression for 1 second before he caught himself and his face once again became lifeless. "No, Bella, I won't put you in danger anymore. I want you to move on and live a normal happy life without me. Take care of yourself, my love. This will be the last time you ever see me." He kissed my forehead, and then he was suddenly gone. I tried to follow him, but he was already gone. I tripped on something and just laid there, welcoming the darkness that threatened to take me. When I woke up again, I was in the arms of a tall boy with russet skin and black hair. I realized it was Sam Yulee. He carried me until we reached my house. I heard Charlie screaming my name and then I was passed into his arms. I closed my eyes and blocked out all the noises. Before I knew it, I was in my bed, with multiple blankets. I looked over at the clock and groaned, 5 a.m. I didn't know what time I was found, but I felt like I was asleep for a long time. I stretched and was suddenly flooded with memories from the last day's events. I curled up in a ball in my bed and cried and sobbed until I couldn't anymore. 1 month later, I walked into the kitchen. Charlie smiled at me and greeted me. "Good morning, Bells, did you sleep well?" I attempted to smile for him. He sighed, seeing though my facade. He then got up from the table, bid me goodbye then left for work. We both knew I was a mess. Ever since EDW, Shudder, he left me. I barely looked in the mirror this morning, not wanting to see the unhealthy reflection looking back at me. I was suddenly hit with a craving for eggs, so I pulled out the skillet and started to fry them up. The eggs were fully cooked when I took them out, too hungry to care that they were scalding hot. On my 3rd bite, I dropped the fork and spit out the egg, completely revolted by the taste and smell. I barely had time to recover when I was suddenly hit with a wave of nausea. I ran to the upstairs bathroom and made it just in time to hurl my breakfast and every meal I had yesterday into the toilet. Suddenly feeling better, I wiped my mouth and brushed my teeth. I decided not to go to school. I called Charlie at the station and let him know. He told me he would phone to school for me. I felt very tired, so I took a nap. When I woke it was noon. I sighed and went to log onto the computer. I then felt sick again, so I ran into the bathroom, in just enough time. After I was cleaned, I groaned and went downstairs for some Tylenol. The rest of the day was pretty uneventful. Charlie called twice to check on me. Then finally, around 6 o'clock he came home. I wasn't hungry, so I made his dinner. The smell of fish didn't exactly go well with my stomach, so I once again found myself running to the bathroom. I finished brushing my teeth and found Charlie standing at the door with a concerned look on his face. "Bella, I will call the school tomorrow morning and excuse you." I nodded and went to bed, surprisingly tired even though I slept a lot today. The next morning I woke up with a growling stomach and a stiff back. I sighed and got out of bed. Charlie had already left for work. I looked through the cabinets to see what appealed to me and found nothing. I went to the refrigerator and found a nice juicy watermelon. Smiling, I cut it up and put the contents into a container. I happily sat down and started eating the watermelon. Before I knew it, I had eaten the whole watermelon. Crap, I laughed and went upstairs to clean my room. I was rummaging through my closet when I felt the sick feeling coming back. I ran to the bathroom and was sick once again. Something wasn't right. That was the 4th time in 2 days, and I had a feeling there would be more. I started hysteriously crying. When I finally pulled myself together, and started running the symptoms through my head. Throwing up, stiff back, hormones, cravings. Then it clicked. Bella Swan, was pregnant. Bella's pa. How could I be pregnant? The only person I was with was a vampire. They can't even have children. Flashback day before Bella's birthday. I walked into my room and opened my window. Charlie was fast asleep, so Edward would be here soon. I was laying in bed when I felt 2 cold arms snake around my waist and pull me close. I smiled at him and kissed him. He kissed me back. I was surprised when he didn't break away, so I figured I would make the most of it. He finally pulled back enough so I could breathe. He shot me a breathtaking crooked smile and laid his head on my chest to listen to my heartbeat. I pulled his head back up to kiss him again. It was more passionate than even the last. I was the one to pull away, my breath ragged. I stared at him, my eyes pleading. "Bella, we can't, you'll get hurt," he told me frowning. "Please Edward, for my birthday." He thought for a minute then nodded. "But if I hurt you, you have to tell me." I smiled and nodded, and we picked up where we left off. End flashback. I need a definite answer. So I got into my truck and drove all the way to Port Angeles. Word travels fast in Forks, and I didn't want Charlie to know. So I went to the Walmart and got the most expensive test there. I drove home, anxious to see the answer. I ran to the bathroom and ripped open the first test. I did my business then set it on the counter. It said it would take 10 minutes for the answer. So I decided to email Renee. She has been sending me countless messages lately, and I have barely responded to any. When the alarm I had set on my phone went off, I knew it was time. So I slowly walked to the bathroom, afraid of what awaited me. I picked up the little stick with shaky hands, already knowing the answer. The one word confirmed my fears: pregnant. Somehow I already knew the answer. I decided to tell Charlie as soon as possible, so I don't have to go through the trouble of hiding it. I am worried about his answer. If he kicks me out I will have to turn to Renee, and I already know she'll deny me. So I am making him his favorite, fish fry. I had just finished emptying the fish onto the plate when Charlie walked in. "Hey Bells, you feeling better?" he asked as he hung up his gun and coat. When he walked in the kitchen I weakly nodded at him. He smiled. "Is that fish I smell?" I smiled at him and set down his plate. "I haven't cooked for you in the last few days, so I decided to make something special." He nodded, his mouth too full to answer. "Dad, I have to tell you something." He set his fork down and motioned for me to go on. "Dad, I am pregnant." I watched as his face turned from purple to red. "He knocked you up and then left." I quickly shook my head. "No Dad, he didn't know. I just found out." He glared at me. "I expected more from you Bella, I want you out of my house." I gaped at him, tears freely flowing down my face. "But Dad, I have nowhere else to go." He laughed bitterly. "You should have thought about that before you got pregnant. I want you gone when I come home from work tomorrow." I ran to my room and tried to quiet my sobs as I fell onto my bed. "Why did you leave me?" I managed to gasp out. I cried onto my bed until I finally fell asleep. Alice's paw. I was sitting on my bed in our new home in Denali, when I suddenly got a vision. Charlie was sitting at the table, red in the face, glaring at a crying Bella. "I want you gone when I come home from work tomorrow." Bella ran to her room and crawled into her bed. "Why did you leave me?" she said to herself. After that, I was snapped back to the present. I knew this would happen. We left to protect her, and she's falling apart. Now, Charlie kicked her out. Alice's paw. I shook my head and ran into Edward's room. "Edward," I screamed. He was sitting on the couch, sulking as usual. He didn't answer, he just shot me an annoyed glare. "Edward, Bella is in trouble and Charlie kicked her out." His annoyed glare turned to anger and hurt. "Alice, I told you not to look in her future." He growled at me and ran outside. I got a vision of Edward sitting in a tree, dry sobbing Bella's name. I shook my head sadly and made a promise to myself. That no matter what it takes, we get Bella back. Bella's paw. When I woke up, I looked at the clock to see that it was 8 a.m. Thank God it was Saturday, because I didn't want to miss another day of school. I ran to the bathroom for my usual morning sickness. I brushed my teeth and started the shower. I slowly got undressed and looked at myself in the mirror. My stomach looked the same as it always did. I rubbed my hand against my stomach lovingly. This was what me and Edward created together. And I already loved my baby. I got into the shower and let the hot water relax my muscles. After I was dressed, I started to pack. I managed to fit all of my clothes into 2 large suitcases. And then my books, and other belonging into another one. I stuffed my license, passport, money, and phone into my purse. I then went to the kitchen for breakfast. I packed up some food, just in case I couldn't get any for a while. I wrote Charlie a note and walked out the door. I sat in my car for half an hour before starting it and pulling out. I decided to go to the small hotel that was in Forks. I was glad that I was 18, because I had money in the bank and was now allowed to access it. I had to use my debit card for the hotel. I decided to pay for 2 weeks' stay. I got one of the nicer rooms, because it had a full kitchen. When I got to my room, I sighed and unpacked. Exhausted, I sat on the bed rubbing my stomach. Well, this is our new home. Don't worry, I'll find somewhere better before you're here. I love you. I felt silly talking to my stomach, but I heard it's good to talk to the baby. I heard my phone ring and pulled it out. It was Jacob. Hello, I asked warily. Bella, I was so worried. Charlie told my dad he kicked you out. Are you okay? Where are you staying? He rushed the words together. Jake, I am fine. I am at a hotel. Charlie kicked me out because I am pregnant. I heard Jake gasp. It's not. His is it. He managed. Of course Jake. I love him. He snorted. Well, I'll have to tell Sam. I don't think he'll mind. Can I come see you? I sighed. I'll come over on Sunday, Jake. He agreed and we hung up. I fell back onto the pillow and went to bed. Edward's paw. Bella, my beautiful angel. Now without a home. I have to go back there. I need to. Wait, I promised I would never bother her again. Well, maybe if I just go check on her. Just to make sure she's okay. I have to stop myself, or by tomorrow I'll be on my knees begging her to take me back. I have to be strong, for her. Even if it's killing me. I once again let the sobs shake through my body. Bella's paw. I woke up groggy and hungry. I decided to go to the store. I needed to start eating a lot more. I walked up and down the aisles, trying to find something appealing. I ended up getting 3 huge watermelons, lots of fruit and vegetables, eggs, cookies, ice cream, and spaghetti. All things I had random cravings for. On my way home, I stopped at the hospital to make an appointment for Tuesday. I was nervous about everyone finding out, so I knew I had to try to hide it. Monday morning, the weekend passed uneventfully, and as I pulled into school, I suddenly felt sick. I pulled into a spot quickly and hurled into a bag. I brought my head up to see if anyone saw me, and I saw that no one was looking at me. I smiled, relieved. This was going to be a long 8 months. Bella's POV 4 months later. I was laying on my bed thinking. I am now 5 months pregnant. Many things have happened since I left Charlie. First, I went to the doctor's for the first time and heard the heartbeat. Flashback. I was sitting in the stuffy waiting room, reading a parenting book and waiting for my turn. Isabella Swan, the doctor will see you now. I nodded weakly and looked around. All eyes were on me. Some women were smiling politely, and other with disapproving looks. I, of course, blushed and hurried to the door. She took my weight and height, then led me to the room. She pointed to the bed and said, "You can change into the dress and wait for the doctor." I nodded and thanked her. I changed and sat on the uncomfortable paper waiting for the doctor. I heard voices outside and then a short, dark-haired woman walked in. She smiled at me and shook my hand. "Hello Isabella, my name is Dr. Smith. I see here that you're pregnant." I nodded. "Okay, I am going to let you hear the heartbeat and then we'll do an ultrasound." I smiled at her. She applied the cold gel to my stomach. I listened intently and then I heard it, the quick, loud thumping of my little angel. All of a sudden, another sound came on, another heartbeat. "Well, it looks like you're having twins." I started to cry a little. Dr. Smith just smiled and handed me a tissue. I cried because I was happy, and I cried because Edward should be here. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and stopped crying. Dr. Smith then turned the machine on and showed me a picture of the babies. I smiled and cried even more, seeing my 2 angels. Dr. Smith asked if I wanted pictures, and I nodded. She soon walked back in and handed my multiple pictures. "Thank you, Dr. Smith," I told her sincerely. "You're more than welcome, Isabella. Why don't you get dressed and then we'll talk about the babies?" I nodded and she walked out. I quickly changed and sat down to wait for her. Minutes later she was back. "Okay Isabella, I will give you a prescription for prenatal vitamins. You should have a balanced diet, fruit, vegetables, meat. I will give you a chart of acceptable foods. Also, try not to get stressed out, it's not good for the babies. Get lots of rest. That's all." You should come back every month to get a checkup. Please the receptionist for that. Have a good day, she said, handing me pamphlets, papers, and a prescription. End flashback. Second, and most important to me, when I felt the babies kick. Flashback. I was sitting on my bed, reading a book to the babies. I had found out last week that I was having a boy and a girl. I suddenly felt a weird movement in my stomach. I looked down confused, and realized it was the baby kicking. I smiled and started crying. I rubbed my stomach and talked to them. The both kicked in together, in sync. End flashback. And third, the whole school knows now that I am pregnant. Flashback. By the time I was 5 months pregnant, I was really showing. Everybody talked about me behind their backs, but no one was brave enough to ask me. Then one day, Lauren strode up to me at lunch. So Bella, I heard you were pregnant, she said loudly, in her high nasally voice. She wanted everyone to hear. She was trying to embarrass me. I smiled. Actually Lauren, I am. With twins. And I don't care what you think. Or anyone else thinks, I said, slight raising my voice. I walked out of the lunch room and into the bathroom, sobbing gently, leaning against the stall. How could you, Edward? How could you leave me alone to do this? Later that day, I went to the principal to discuss my options. He told me I could still graduate, and that when I was 8 months pregnant, I could leave school. But I had to come by to get my work and turn it in. I thanked him and quickly headed to La Push to see Jake. End flashback. Jacob and his pack had accepted me, and invited me over frequently. They were all there for me, but I was still alone. I hardly cried anymore, knowing the stress wasn't good for the babies. I felt sick, so I stood up to go to the bathroom, but passed out instead. 3 days later, I woke up confused. I felt like I was sleeping forever. I pulled out my phone. I had 56 missed calls. All from Jake. The weird thing was, the calls were from the February the 15, 16 and 17. But I went to sleep on the night of the 14 of February. And if today was the 17, that means I slept for 3 days. I gasped and ran to the mirror. My skin was even paler than it was before. My hair was now shinier and healthier looking. My eyes a mix between brown and gold. And my skin was cold and hard. Was I a vampire? Bella's paw. I decided to eat since I haven't for 3 days. I went to the kitchen, but none of the food looked good. I made some cereal and took the first bite. I gagged and quickly spit it out. It smelled and tasted disgusting. Maybe I was a vampire. I decided to test my theory. I left the building and came to the tip of the woods. I started running, and was not disappointed. I ran as fast as Edward used to. Then I smelled something delicious. I turned my head and saw a deer. Without hesitation I ran over to it and bit into its neck, draining it. I pushed the body off of me, disgusted at what I did. I started to cry, afraid of what happened. Wait, I thought, vampires can't cry, I can't be a full vampire. But I am definitely not human. I continued thinking while I ran home. I went straight up to my room. I was tired, which was good because that's another sign I am part human. I was about to go to bed when my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was one of Charlie's men, Deputy Mark. I quickly answered it, knowing it would be important. Bella, it's Deputy Mark. There's been an accident with Charlie. I gasped and said, is he okay? Where is he? He hesitated before answering. He's in the hospital. He's not doing too well and might not make it. He wants you here. I snapped the phone shut. I ran at vampire speed to my truck, and tried to hold back the tears so that I could drive. When I got there, I ran straight to the emergency wing. Where's Chief Swan? I screamed at the receptionist. She looked up startled. Room 114 dear. I ran there at a quick human pace, trying not to raise suspicion. I busted in the room and stopped. Charlie was hooked up to all kinds of machines and had a huge bandage covering his abdomen. He looked over at me with pleading eyes. I ran to him and grabbed his hand. He gripped my hand weakly before whispering, I was shot, Bella, and I am not going to make it. I am so sorry I kicked you out. You know I love you more than anything. You're my little girl. Everything is in your name, Bella. The house, my money, everything. All the arrangements were already made for my funeral. Everything is paid for. I shook my head, trying to see, but it was impossible with how I was crying. Dad, I forgive you. And I love you too. I am sorry for disappointing you. I love you so much. He smiled at me, and I could tell he didn't have much time left. I made a hard decision, but I decided he needed to know. Dad, Edward and his family are vampires. My baby is half vampire, and so am I. After the baby is born, I think I will be a full vampire. But don't worry, Edward's family doesn't drink human blood, only animal. I just want you to know the truth. His eyes widened, taking in the information. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze. I believe you, Bella. There always was something weird about them, he said with a chuckle. I love you, Bella, he whispered, and closed his eyes, a smile on his face. The monitor showed a flat red line, and beeped annoyingly. I love you too, Dad, forever. I kissed his head and walked from the room. I was running out of the hospital, tears streaming down my face, when a pair of warm hands caught me. I turned and looked at Jake. He had tears in his eyes. He pulled me close and hugged me. I let him comfort me. 5 days later, I looked at myself in the mirror one last time before leaving for the funeral home. I got there first, and Jacob and Billy arrived shortly after. The whole town of Forks was there. I sat in the corner the whole time. But that didn't stop people from coming up to me. I was zoned out, when suddenly someone has their arms wrapped around me. I looked up. It was Renee. We hadn't spoken since I told her I was pregnant. She wanted nothing to do with me. I glared at her. She looked apologetic. Bella, I am so sorry. I just wanted you to have better than what I had. I love you. I am sorry, she said quickly. My expression softened slightly. It's okay, Mom, I forgive you. She slightly smiled at me. I knew I had to forgive her. I let her take my hand and pull me up, as they carried Charlie's body to the hearse to go to the church. I sobbed quietly the whole time. When we got to the church, they asked me to say a few words. I stood up and nervously looked around. My father was a great man. He dedicated his life to keeping Forks safe. He was always fair and made the right choices. He took me in without hesitation. I loved him so much. He was the greatest dad in the world. I had to finish then, because I was crying too hard to say anything else. I then took my seat next to Billy, who took my hand and smiled at me, tears freely falling from his face. Other people went up to speak, and I listened intently, crying the whole time. Before I knew it, we were on the way to the cemetery. I tried to stop crying, because this would be my final goodbye to Charlie. But instead, I just stood by the hole, Renee and Billy holding either of my hands. And Jacob standing crying behind me. Alice's paw. I was sitting with Edward in his room, trying to cheer him up even though I needed cheered up too. I was worried, because I haven't had any visions of Bella lately. Edward heard my thought and shot me a glare. Sorry, Edward, I said in my head. He just nodded at me. My vision went black and I was having a vision. Bella, pale white with goldish eyes, was standing at the front of the church. She wiped her eyes and looked around. My father was a great man. He dedicated his life to keeping Forks safe. He was always fair and made the right choices. He took me in without hesitation. I loved him so much. He was the greatest dad in the world, she said, and then took her seat next to Billy Black. But when she was walking back, I saw her stomach. And she was pregnant. But wait, was she a vampire too? I shook my head and opened my eyes. Edward was growling. Edward, we have to go back, her dad died and she's pregnant. I said softly. Alice, I promised I wouldn't interfere with her life. She's pregnant now. I almost laughed at that. You idiot, it's your baby, you're the only one she was ever with. I screamed at him. His eyes got wide with realization. And then he was gone. I ran after him, to Carlisle's study. He was sitting in the chair in front of Carlisle, speaking quickly. Carlisle, he said quickly. We have some news on Bella. Carlisle's eyes got big before he nodded, meaning for Edward to go on. Charlie is dead. Bella's pregnant, and she's half vampire. How is this possible? Carlisle narrowed his eyes before speaking. There are legends that a male vampire can impregnate a human female. When she is 5 months pregnant, she turns half vampire. The baby is born at 7 months. After the birth, the mother becomes a full vampire. When the children reach the age their father was when he was turned, and they will have more advanced skills than other children until they turn. If you and got Bella pregnant 5 months ago, she only had 2 months before the baby is delivered, he finished slowly. My vision once again went black. Edward was at Bella's window watching her sleep. He crawled into her bed and wrapped his arms around her. She smiled even in her sleep. Never again will I leave you again, my angels, he vowed her. That meant Edward decided that we were going back. I screamed happily. Carlisle, I am going back to Bella. I was planning on it anyway. I can't stand to be away from her, and I need to help with my child. Edward sighed, looking up at Carlisle. Carlisle nodded and said, Of course, Edward, we will all move back. We already think of Bella as a daughter and we love her. We will leave in 3 days. We need to pack and I need to quit my job. I smiled and ran out of the room. I was going to get my best friend back. Edward's paw. I carried the last box to the car. We were leaving now. I couldn't stand being away from Bella any longer. I had to travel by car, so it would take 3 days to get there. I wasn't even sure she would take me back. But I would beg and plead if needed. Me having a child is a miracle, and I am not willing to waste that. I was stupid for long enough, and I will never leave Bella or my child again. Bella's paw. The funeral was 3 days ago, and I've barely left the house since. Today I decided I would go shopping. Charlie left me a lot of money, from insurance only offered to police officers. There was a little more than $500,000 with my name on it. I knew I had to get ready for the baby, along with a new car. I didn't want to retire my truck, but it's not exactly baby-proof. I reluctantly got my purse and walked out the door. When I pulled up to the dealership in Port Angeles, I was debating. I wasn't really sure what kind of car to get. As soon as I got in my car, I was greeted by a salesman. Hello, my name is Dave. I will be helping you today. Is there anything in particular that catches your eye? I turned to see a short, plump, middle-aged man standing in front of me. I smiled at him and replied, Well, I need a family car. Enough room for myself and 2 car seats. He smiled back at me and motioned for me to follow him. 2 long hours later, I drove out of there in my brand new bright red 2009 Pontiac G3. I traded in my tuck, and I couldn't believe that they offered me $9,000 for it. I guess it was some kind of antique, and a collector would pay a lot for it. I then went to Babies R Us. I decided to get the cribs first. I didn't even know where to start, there were so many choices. For my baby boy I got a Trend Lab Giggles 4-piece crib bedding set. It was adorable, green and brown stripes. I got it because it reminded me of our meadow. For my little girl, I got a Bananafish Bubblegum 4-piece crib bedding set. This one was pink, green, and yellow. I decided to only get 1 changing table, but I needed one big enough for 2 babies. I got 2 Graco Snugride infant car seats, 1 in pink and 1 in blue. I got 1 twin stroller. I also grabbed 5 diaper bags. I got 2 swings, and 2 bassinets. I spent an hour in the clothing section. I got more clothes than they would need. I got the Delta Jenny Lind change table. It was espresso color with green stripes. I got 2 of Dr. Brown's BPA-free deluxe set. Those were special bottles to reduce gas, spitting up, and burping. I got about 30 other bottles and nipples. Then I got 30 cans of formula. I got diapers, wipes, creams, baby powder, shampoo, and everything else I would need. I had gotten everything I needed in 1 day. Proud of myself, I walked up to the register. The clerk's eyes went wide when she saw my purchase. I had fit everything in 4 shopping carts. And the cribs and changing table would be delivered tomorrow. She smiled politely at me as she rung up my items. When she was finally done, she looked at me and said, That will be $3,567. Cash or credit? I tried not to grimace at the price while handing her my gold-colored credit card. She smiled at me one last time as I walked away. By the time I got everything loaded and into my new car, I was starving. I knew I didn't just want regular food. I had figured out that I could mostly just eat regular food, but once a week I had to hunt. Bella's paw. I woke up early, because I wasn't sure when the cribs would be delivered. All the things I bought were still in bags. I took a quick shower then went downstairs for breakfast. I more or less waddled down the stairs, because I was getting so big. I was only 5.5 months pregnant and I was as big as someone who was 9 months pregnant. I sighed when I heard the doorbell ring. 4 hours later, I was finally done. Last night I had painted the baby's room, a light green, with stripes of pink on one side and blue on the other. Their nursery was going to be my old room. And I moved into Charlie's room. I looked around, satisfied. It took me 2 hours to put the cribs up. Then another 2 to put up the double changing table, put the clothes away, and everything else I needed. I sat in the rocking chair, the same one Edward used to sit in. I was thinking about what it would be like if Edward was here. He would be so happy to help me put up the baby's nursery. He would probably be his usual overprotective self and try to do everything himself. Before I knew it, I was crying. I let myself cry for a few minutes before stopping. I rubbed my bump lovingly. I smiled and started talking to them. Your daddy doesn't know about you guys, but if he did he would love you. He would spoil you and give you everything you ever wanted. Mommy loves him so much. And it hurt when he left, but I still have you guys. And that's the best thing I could ever ask for. Mommy loves you. As soon as I said I love you I felt them both kicking. I smiled and kept rubbing my stomach. It seems they love it when I say I love them, and I do many times a day. Edward's paw. I was driving 3 times the speed limit. I looked in the rear view mirror. I saw Carlisle's Mercedes, Rosalie's BMW, Alice's Porsche, and Emmett driving a huge moving truck. I was in pure bliss. I was going to get my Bella back. I was ignoring my family's thoughts until I heard Alice's. Bella was walking around a baby store, smiling and getting many things. She paid, then walked out to a new car. Her stomach growled and she sighed. Then she got into the car and drove home. She ran into the forest, and sniffed the air. Her head whipped around and she ran after a large deer. She grimaced and gracefully leapt at it, snapping its neck and draining it. I grimaced at that. Then Alice had another vision. Bella was sitting in a chair in her old room, which was now converted into a nursery. She was rubbing her stomach lovingly. She thought for a few minutes, her eyes growing sadder. Then she started sobbing. A few minutes later she stopped, and said to her stomach, "Your daddy doesn't know about you guys, but if he did he would love you. He would spoil you and give you everything you ever wanted. Mommy loves him so much. And it hurt when he left, but I still have you guys. And that's the best thing I could ever ask for. Mommy loves you." Those words almost broke my dead heart. I started to sob. I was so stupid for leaving her, for leaving them. I growled when my phone rang. I didn't need to look at the caller to know it was Alice. I hastily snapped it open. "What do you want, Alice?" I asked, trying to be calm. She sighed loudly. "Edward, you're going back, and that's all that matters. She will be happy once we get back. Don't beat yourself up about it or I'll make Jasper drive the moving truck and Emmett can ride with you," she said before laughing again. I cracked a smile and hung up. I made a turn and then looked at the sign, "Welcome to Washington," it said in big black letters. Bella's paw. I was driving down to La Push to see the pack. They invited me over to Emily's for dinner. I smiled when I saw Jacob waiting on the porch with an umbrella. He ran to my door before opening it. He smiled at me and tightly hugged me with one arm. He took my hand and led me to the house. "Nice car, Bells," he said with a smile. I just shook my head and laughed. I walked in and the whole pack was sitting in the living room. Embry jumped up. "Hey Bells," he said, blushing and hugging me. Sam stood up and walked over to me. "We're glad you could come, Bella. We've missed you," he said and surprised me with hugging me. I smiled joyfully back at him. I walked into the kitchen to see Emily. I chuckled when I saw her mixing a large salad on the table full of food. "Bella," she squealed, grabbing me into a hug. I laughed and hugged her back. She looked at my stomach and smiled. "Hello in there, this is your Aunt Emily. I love you guys," and with that, they were kicking. I smiled proudly at her. Then she called the boys in for dinner. I don't know how we did it, but we all managed to sit at the table. After dessert, Sam cleared his throat. "Bella, we also called you here tonight for another reason. You are now half vampire, and we're guessing after the babies are delivered, you will be full vampire. You know that we all love you as a sister, so we will make an exception. You and the babies will always be protected by this pack," he said slowly. I was crying. I was so touched. "Sam, Thank you so much. You don't know how much that means to me. I love you all too, I said, and for the rest of the night, we talked happily and played games. I was so tired when I got home, I went straight to bed in my jeans. When I woke up, I stretched and looked around the room. My heart stopped when I saw who was standing at the wall opposite me, staring at me. The one person who I never thought I would see again, Edward Cullen. Edward's pa. I gently opened the window. I looked over on the bed and saw the most beautiful girl in the world, my Bella. I looked down at her stomach and smiled when I saw the bump. I laid in bed next to her, careful not to touch her in case she woke up. I didn't want that to be our reunion. I laid next to her all night, not willing to move. Halfway through night, she stirred slightly and said, "Edward, I still love you. Come back to me." My breathing stopped. I felt a pang in my chest. Leaving her was the worst mistake I've ever made. I was disappointed in myself. I had even changed my family's life. Carlisle worked all day. Esme just busied herself making plans to restore an old house. Alice didn't shop anymore. Emmett didn't smile. Jasper stayed in his room all day because of the emotions, and Rosalie never looked in the mirror. I knew I had hurt Bella bad, and I would do anything to get her back. I was afraid that she would tell me to get out and never come back. I wouldn't be able to survive leaving her again. I wanted to look at the nursery, so I silently got up and walked to her old room. I opened the door and smiled widely. She did a wonderful job. I was confused when I saw two cribs, one blue and one pink. Maybe she wasn't sure the gender, so she got both. I walked over and opened the loose floorboard. I gently pulled out the gifts and picture. I mentally kicked myself. I knew it was childish to hide them, but I wanted a piece of me to be with her. Little did I know that piece would be a baby. I wanted to be the best father. Since I never imagined I would have kids, I had to make the very best of it. They will be so spoiled, especially since Alice will begin shopping again. I took the gifts in my arms and went to Bella's room. I was glad that she was still sleeping. I set the gifts in her dresser. She would get them later. I once again took my position laying next to her. Hopefully, 24 hours from now I would be holding on to her while she sleeps. Around 9, Bella stirred again, then awoke. She stretched and looked around the room, her ear speeding up when her eyes met me. She looked up at me intently, and then closed her eyes and shook her head. When she opened her eyes again, she looked at me and started to cry. I ran to her and pulled her into my arms. She tried to push me away, but then embraced me. I nuzzled into her neck, and her body stopped shaking. I began kissing her neck, her face, her forehead, and her nose. She looked at me and took a deep breath. Her eyes were filled with tears, threatening to escape. I knew I had to explain to her. "Bella, leaving you was the worst mistake I ever made in my life. And I understand if you never forgive me. The whole time I was gone, all I did was think about you. Every time I opened my eyes, it was your face I saw. I love you more than anything in the world, and I am so sorry. I am sorry I wasn't here when Charlie kicked you out. I am sorry I wasn't here for the ultrasounds. I am sorry I wasn't here when Charlie passes. I am sorry I wasn't here to set up the nursery. And most importantly, I am sorry I wasn't here to see your beautiful face every morning. I love you, Bella, and I love our baby." She gaped at me, taking it all in. "Oh, Edward," she sobbed. I just held her and rubbed her back. I let her cry. When she was finished, I handed her a tissue. She glanced up at me, unknowingly dazzling me. "Edward, I love you so much. When you left, it hurt. And I couldn't stop thinking about you. But I had to be strong for my children. But I forgive you. I understand why I left. But before I let you back into my heart, I need you to promise that you'll never leave again. I won't be able to live with that." I smiled at her and held her close. "I would never ever leave you again. I love you, both of you," I told her seriously. She smiled sheepishly at me and said, "All three of us, Edward. I am having twins." I nearly jumped up with excitement. It was a miracle I was having one child, now two. I was so happy. I decided now was a perfect time. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the ring. I have been waiting for so long to give it to her. "Isabella Marie Swan, I love you more than anything in the world. Without you, my life is pointless. Leaving you is the worst mistake I've ever made. And I learn quickly from my mistakes. I won't ever leave again. I have wanted to ask you this for a long time. Will you marry me? Bella's paw. I didn't know what to say. Edward came back and begged for forgiveness. Now he wants me to marry him. I always had a feeling that he still loved me, and would come back. I already knew my answer. Yes, I told him, tears of joy in my eyes. He leaned over and kissed me passionately. The twins went crazy. Edward pulled away and looked at my stomach, asking for approval. I nodded at him and he put his icy hands on my bulging stomach. The babies continued to kick. Hello my little angels. This is your daddy. I am sorry I wasn't here for a little while. But I am never going to leave you guys and your mommy again. I love you. Twins kicked even more after that. I started to cry. The scene in front of me was so perfect. Bella, what's wrong my love? Edward asked, with a panicked expression. I laughed a little before replying. Cheers of joy Edward. I am so happy that you're here. And I am going to be a mom. I love you, I said before kissing him passionately. As I do you, my love. When I pulled back for breath, my stomach growled loudly. I blushed, and Edward laughed. Edward, I am going to go shower first before I eat. Promise not to leave me. I asked in a shy voice. His face turned pained before answering. I will never leave you again, my life. I guess time will prove that to you. I smiled at him and grabbed my clothes. It was no longer necessary to carry the things I needed in a bag, because I was the only person here. I cringed when I looked at my naked body in the mirror. My stomach was huge, but my skin was getting paler. My hair was always shiny and it never got greasy. And my face was getting more beautiful every day. I was now every bit as beautiful as Alice or Esme. I even came close to Rosalie. I was glad that I wasn't getting stretch marks. I sighed when the hot water touched my skin. 20 minutes later, I walked out of the bathroom, in shorts and a big t-shirt. I walked to my room and turned frantic when I didn't see Edward. I am down here love, he called up the stairs. Halfway down the stairs, I smelled something wonderful. I nearly sprinted to the kitchen. Edward was dumping a huge cheese omelet onto a plate. He set 2 pieces of toast on the side of the plant and set it on the table. Right after that, he put 2 blueberry pancakes and bacon on the table. My stomach snarled. Edward, you didn't have to do this for me, I said smiling. He warmly smiled back. Bella, I've spent almost 7 months away from you. This is only the beginning of me making it up to you. Plus, you're eating for 3 now, he told me seriously. I sighed, but sat down. I started to eat the omelet when a bowl of fruit and a cup of orange juice was also places in front of me. I smiled widely at him. He kissed my forehead and sat down next to me. I ate the whole meal, much to Edward's amusement. I asked Edward what we were doing today. Well, the whole family wants to see you. They should be done moving in by now. Why don't we go see them? My eyes got wide and joyfully told him yes. He ran to my room and grabbed my purse while I started the car. He got in with a sour expression. He knew I wouldn't drive nearly as fast as he did. He held my hand the whole way there. After going down the long driveway, I pulled up to the Cullen mansion. I was a little nervous about seeing them all. I looked to the porch and saw all 6 of them standing there, smiling. Edward came and opened my door and helped me out. I had barely gotten out when I saw something blurry coming towards me at super speed. It hit into me and almost knocked me down from impact. I knew it was Alice even before she started screaming, Bella. Oh my God, I missed you so much. I am so sorry. I love you. I started laughing and hugged her back. I heard all of them laughing, then a booming voice say, all right Alice, stop hogging Bella. We want a turn too. I didn't have to look to see who that was. I was suddenly caught in a bear hug with Emmett. I was glad that I am half vampire because I would have probably broke. Bella, I missed you, Emmett screamed. I laughed lightly as he set me down. Next, I was in Esme's arms. She was lightly sobbing and rubbing my back. Bella dear, we've missed you so much. I am sorry that we left. But we will never leave again. I nodded and smiled at her. I myself was crying. Carlyle pulled me into a gentle hug and kissed me on the forehead. He smiled brightly at me and said, Bella, my daughter. Without you there was something missing. It hurt as if one of our children were gone. Please forgive us. I told him it was okay. The next person to hug me took me by surprise, Jasper. He looked at me with apologetic eyes. Bella, I am so sorry. This was all my fault. Please allow me to be part of my niece and nephew's life. He asked softly. I pulled away from him and looked him straight in the face. Jasper, this wasn't your fault. It was mine. I should have been more careful. And of course I want you to be in their life. He smiled happily at me. Rosalie looked nervous before wrapping me in a quick hug. I embraced her back and she told me she had to talk to me later. I nodded, confused. I wasn't Rosalie's favorite person in the world. After all the greeting and apologies, we went inside. Carlisle wanted to have an ultrasound done to see how far along I was. They had set up an ultrasound machine in the room next to his study. I sat on the table while Edward held my hand. Carlisle put the jelly on my stomach and rubbed the wand over it. Soon, you could hear 2 heartbeats and see 2 little babies on the screen. Edward stared at the screen in awe. I squeezed his hand lightly and he smiled at me. He rubbed my stomach while Carlisle talked to us. Bella, this is obviously not a normal pregnancy. The babies are growing a little bit faster and they will be delivered at 7 months. He smiled and left the room, giving me time to take it in. I looked over to Edward, with a panicked expression. Not to worry, love, you will all be fine, he reassured me. I leaned over to kiss him, and our lips had barely met when my cell phone started ringing. I flipped it open. Why didn't you tell me they were back? They could hurt you and the babies. My angry werewolf screamed into the phone as Edward growled loudly. Jacob's paw. I was almost to Bella's, when I smelled something sickly sweet, vampire. I started to shake, but controlled with much difficulty. As soon as I rounded the corner, I saw his car in the driveway. It took everything I had not to change. I ran to the door and thrust it open, breaking the lock. I called her name and there was no reply. I whipped out my phone and hastily called her. As soon as she answered the phone I started shouting. Why didn't you tell me they were back? They could hurt you and the babies. I started. I heard a loud growl and I growled back. Bella, I said, calming down some, meet the pack at the clearing in an hour to discuss this. I said bitterly, then hung up. I ran out the door, and was a wolf before I even hit the woods. As soon as I phased I heard several voices in my head. Jacob, are you okay? Quill. Turns out your beloved bloodsucker isn't as alone as we though. Leah. Calm down about this, Jacob. What did you expect her to do? You knew she loved him. Think rationally before making any decisions. Sam. I growled. That shut them all up. My stomach grumbled. I growled at myself. I didn't want to phase back yet, so I took down a large elk. Emmett's paw. I rushed downstairs as soon as I heard Jacob screaming into the phone at Bella. She was sitting on the examination table, her hand intertwined with Edward's. I stood beside them, listening to every word the dog said, before rudely hanging up on my little sister. What was that about? I said to Bella. Suddenly, the whole family was behind me, waiting for an answer. Bella sighed. Oh, the pack just wants to discuss you guys coming back. Truthfully, I am a little worried. The pack is very protective of me. I snorted and they all ignored me. Carlisle told us to be ready in half an hour, before leaving the room with Renesmee. Everyone else left the room, except Bella and Edward. Edward's paw. How dare that filthy mutt think he can boss Bella around? These are Bella and my children we are talking about. I am grateful for them keeping Bella safe, while I was away. But they have no right to tell Bella what she can and can't do. I took Bella's hand and led her to our room. She smiled slightly at me as we walked in. She gave me a questioning look when she saw the huge canopy bed in the middle of the room. I just shrugged and led her to it. She sat down and pulled me with her. I knew she was worried about the pack meeting. Bella love, we don't have to go if you don't want to. I began. She just shook her head and replied. We have to, after all they have done for me. They made acceptations for me, and helped me through everything. I can't just ignore them. We have to face this. I just nodded at her, not wanting to upset her with my real thoughts. I longed to kiss her again, but our real reunion would be tonight. 20 minutes later, we all walked out of the door. Well, I carried Bella, wrapped in a large blanket. She told me she could run, but I insisted. We ran for 5 minutes, before reaching the clearing. 9 huge wolves, and 1 tan boy in just shorts were waiting for us. Bella's paw. When we got there, the wolves along with Sam in his human form were waiting for us. Edward sat me down, but kept his arms around my huge waist. Sam smiled at me, and greeted the Cullens somewhat bitterly. Now that you are back, I believe we should make a new treaty. We have talked to the elders about this, and we have come to a decision. Since Bella is close to all of us, and she will soon be a vampire, we need to renew it. Sam said, and then paused, allowing us to take it in. I looked up at Edward, and his face was calm. That relieved me because Sam obviously did not want to fight. Sam cleared his throat to continue. From now on we will let you on our land. We now know for sure that you do not hunt humans. Mainly because we want to be able to see Bella regularly. And in return, we would like permission on your land. He finished. Carlyle stepped forward, to speak with Sam. Of course you will be allowed on our land. And we appreciate access to yours. It might come in handy when you guys need a doctor, Carlyle joked. Sam smiled at him, and extended his hand. They shook hands briefly before the wolves ran into the forest. Edward once again, against my will, scooped me up into his arms. I didn't really have much time to complain, because I fell asleep shortly after he started running. I awoke slightly when I felt myself being set down. I opened my eyes, and Edward was laying next to me smiling. I mumbled that I loved him before laying my head down. He wrapped his arms around me, and I could hear him humming my lullaby. I smiled as I slept, truly happy. Bella's paw. I woke up and stretched before looking around the room. I smiled when I saw Edward sitting on the couch just feet away from me. I stood up and waddled over to him. He stood up and wrapped his arms around my stomach. He leaned in to kiss me, and I kissed him passionately back. It wasn't until we heard our door open and our favorite annoying little pixie scream, "Shopping time, Bella." I groaned. "Edward," I said, "is there any chance of me escaping from this?" I asked him hopefully. He laughed. "No, sorry love, but she has waited 2 whole days." He finished, trying not to laugh again while Alice growled at him. Alice handed me a pair of clothes and made Edward leave. She smiled at me before leaving. I was just finished getting dressed when Rosalie walked in. I was confused, but then remembered she wanted to talk to me. She smiled at me, and I returned a smile. "Bella, I was wondering if I could talk to you." I nodded, encouraging her to go on. "Well, as you know, I am not too fond of this life. Yes, I love my family and Emmett, but I would trade everything to be able to have children. And this is the only chance that this family will have a baby. And I know that I was so mean to you. But the truth is, I was jealous and mad. Jealous because you could have a baby, and grow old and watch them play. Mad because you wanted to throw it all away. What I am really trying to say is that I hope I didn't ruin my chances to be a part in my niece and nephew's life. Can you find it in your heart to forgive me?" she asked, looking at me with sad eyes. I was somewhat shocked, and I also felt bad. "Rosalie, of course I forgive you. I understand why you think I would be throwing it away, and I am happy that I didn't because if not I wouldn't be having these miracle children. And, I am turning into a vampire anyway, so I get both things. Of course I will let you in my baby's life," I told her. She looked like she would cry if she could. She pulled me into a hug, but let go when she felt the baby's kick. She looked down at my stomach and smiled. I nodded, telling her to touch my stomach. She did, and they stopped. She looked up at me with a sad expression. "Talk to them, tell them that you're their Aunt Rose." She smiled at me when I said, "Aunt Rose." She once again placed her hands on my stomach, and looked at me before talking. "Hello in there, this is your Aunt Rose. I am sorry I haven't been around much, but from now I will always be here, forever. I love you guys so much," she said, and the babies kicked happily. She once again looked like she would cry. She stood up and hugged me. Together, we walked downstairs, to see what was going on. I walked into the kitchen and Esme was just setting a huge plate full of eggs and bacon and toast down. I smiled brightly at her. "Thank you so much Esme, but you didn't have to do this," I told her. She smiled. "I know, but I wanted to. It makes me feel like a real mom. This is the only time I ever get to cook," she finished, smiling sheepishly. "You already are my mom," I said, and she hugged me. I then turned to my breakfast, which smelled delicious. Of course, I ate the whole thing. I was just getting up to wash the dishes when Esme grabbed it and started washing it. I sighed, and she laughed. Edward and Alice walked in at the same time. I told Alice I needed a few more minutes, and then Edward carried me upstairs. I went straight to the bathroom, and brushed my teeth. I looked in the mirror, pleased at what I saw. I then walked into the bedroom and got my purse. Edward, yet again, didn't listen to me and carried me downstairs. Alice was waiting at the door, almost bouncing up and down from excitement. Edward set me down, and kissed me. Bella, we're going to have so much fun. All of us girls are going. And we have a surprise for you. Rosalie and Esme are already in the car, so let's go. She said, dragging me along. I love you, Bella, have a good time. Edward shouted as Alice took me to the garage. When I got in the car, I was shocked at who was inside. Rosalie was driving, with Esme in the passenger seat. And Emily was sitting in the back seat, smiling at me. I smiled brightly at her, and as soon as I got in, she hugged me. We all talked about the babies on the way there. When we pulled up at the mall, Alice jumped out and helped pull me out of the car. 4 hours later, I was standing at the checkout like with Alice. Rosalie and Esme went to look at baby stuff, while me and Alice waited in line. This was seriously the 50 feet th store we went in. And of course, Alice bought something in every store. From clothes for me, to stuff for the babies, to bridesmaids' dresses. And I was exhausted and hungry. After this, we'll get you and Emily something to eat. Then we'll go home, I promise, Alice told me, trying not to smile. As soon as we were out of there, we met up with the rest of the girls. Me and Emily decided to get Subway for lunch. We all sat down at the table, and talked while me and Emily ate. So Emily, I hear you and Sam are getting married, Alice said to Emily, looking hopeful. Emily nodded, and proudly showed Alice her engagement ring. Oh Emily, it's beautiful. But please, please, please let me help you plan your wedding, Alice asked, very excitedly. Emily of course agreed, and they began happily chatting about all the wedding details. When we were finished, we started to make our way to the car. We didn't have many bags because Rosalie and Esme already made several trips to the car. Alice helped me into the car, and handed me a pillow and blanket. I smiled at her, she knew I was tired. Everyone got in and we started making our way home. How they fit all of those bags into the trunk I will never know. Right after my head hit the pillow I was out. The next thing I knew, I was laying on the bed. I covered myself up and went back to sleep. Edward's paw. The meeting last night went a lot better than I expected. I hoped for more time to talk to Bella that night, but she was tired. I held her while she slept, smiling every time she said my name. Today I went hunting, and brought back some deer blood for Bella. Alice had showed me the vision that Bella would be thirsty when she got home. I jumped up when I heard Rosalie's car pull up. I grabbed my beautiful sleeping fiancée up and took her to my bed. Edward, come help us carry bags in, Alice screamed at me in my head. I sighed and went to help my favorite, Bella's paw. I was sleeping, when I felt a cold hand on my head. My eyes shot open and I abruptly sat up. Edward laughed slightly and moved his arm. I am sorry love, I didn't mean to startle you, he said, trying not to laugh again. I attempted to glare at him but couldn't help smiling. What time is it? I asked, trying to get out of the bed. It's 6 o'clock love. Esme has made dinner for you, the whole family wants to visit with you, he answered as he pulled me out of bed. He ran me to the bathroom, knowing I would like to fix myself up before dinner. He kissed my head and walked out of the bathroom. I brushed my hair and my teeth before leaving. I know it was stupid to brush your teeth before dinner, but I was afraid of my breath. I was about to start walking down the stairs when I was suddenly picked up and flying down the stairs in somebody's arms. Assuming it was Edward, I turned to glare at him. But when I looked back I was surprised to see that it wasn't Edward, it was Jasper. He smiled at me and set me down. I looked around confused. I laughed when I realized I was sitting on a chair in the dining room. The whole family was seated around me, looking at me lovingly. I smiled as I looked at my food. Mushroom ravioli and a thermos of fresh blood. They all watched me eat with curious expressions. Bells, how does that taste good? It smells like crap. Emmett told me. The whole table laughed at him. I smiled at my family. Everything was finally back to normal. Well, as normal as it gets. Last night went better than I expected, but I needed to talk to Jacob. He was my best friend, my personal son. After I was done eating, I drank the animal blood. I wiped my mouth with a napkin and looked around, embarrassed. Alice smiled me reassuringly. Esme took my plate to the sink and Edward helped me up. We were going to have a family movie night. That made me laugh. A family of vampires sitting around a TV watching a movie. Rose and Emmett sat on one of the couches, Esme and Carlisle sat on the love seat, Jasper and Alice made a bed on the floor. While me and Edward laid on one of the couches with a thick blanket covering us. He wrapped his arm around me. And I sighed happily. Everyone watched as Emmett got up from his seat on the couch and walked over to the shelf stocked with DVDs. He picked something and turned so that we couldn't see it. Edward and Alice both laughed, but when I looked to him for an explanation he shook his head. He put it in the DVD player and sat down. The movie went right to the opening credits. Dracula came onto the screen in huge letters. We all laughed, while Emmett just smiled like an idiot. The next morning, the sun beamed brightly in my window. I groaned and rolled over. I hit something hard and Edward laughed. I had accidentally rolled right onto him. I blushed and tried to pull away. But he just held me there. Bella love, Carlisle says there is about 2 weeks until the babies are born. Would you like to go with me to one of our private vacation spots for this week? Just me and you, for some privacy. And then next week we can spend getting ready for our angels. Quote. He blurted out the end quickly. He actually looked nervous. I smiled at him. Of course Edward, I would love that. I told him seriously. Just then, my annoying pixie sister burst in the room. Yay, I knew you would say yes Bella. Now get ready, your plane leaves in 3 hours. She came over and helped me up. Can we stop at my house? I have to pack. I said to Edward. Alice shook her head. Already taken care of, Alice said, smiling at me. She laughed and handed me a pair of clothes, pushing me towards the bathroom. 2.5 hours later, I was showered, dressed, fed, and waving goodbye to my family who were standing on the porch. Edward put the last suitcase in the trunk and got into the car. We rolled my window down and shouted that we loved them. I laughed when I heard a chorus of, I love you. And, try not to have too much fun. Of course, the last one has been from Emmett only. While Edward turned on the heat, because I was always cold these days. He grabbed my hand as he sped out of the driveway. Alice paused. The second they pulled away, I called my family into the dining room for the game plan. Last night I had the perfect idea when I thought about where the Edward, Bella, and the babies would love. Bella had done a wonderful job at Charlie's, but these babies were going to be half vampire, and Bella would be a full vampire. They couldn't live close to other people. I got a vision of this little deserted house in the middle of the woods. I told the family about it and everyone but Edward went to check it out. They thought it was a great idea to fix it up for them. So I had Edward take Bella to Isle Esme. As soon as we got home from looking at the house, I called Home Depot and ordered the paint, flooring, windows, and everything else I needed from there. We were going to be really busy this week, but if we all worked together we could get this done. Okay, I told them. Today, we need to clean out Charlie's house, pick up the stuff from Home Depot, and send all Charlie's stuff to our special storage place. I told them, Carlisle, you go get the stuff from Home Depot and take it to the old house. Everyone else will clean out Charlie's house. That will take exactly 6 hours. As soon as we're done, Emmett and Rose will take the stuff to storage. Jasper and Carlisle will work on the outside of the house while me and Esme paint the rooms and then put in the flooring. When Emmett and Rose get back, they're going to put in the windows and then we'll call it a night. That will be around 12. Be ready to start tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. I told them, and they all nodded. Carlisle grabbed his wallet and went to his car, while the rest of us got in the moving van. This was going to be a long week. 2 months pregnant. I was just starting to fully adjust to the idea of being pregnant. I had just got home from school, and I was starving. I drove to the store, and got enough food to last me a few weeks. When I got to the register, I pulled out my wallet. My eyes widened in horror when I saw that I only had $300. I sighed. I knew this day would come. When I first moved out of Charlie's, I withdrew all of my money from the bank. I had exactly $5,063.56. I had spent $3,000 on the hotel. I had only been there a month, but I paid for last month and the next 4 months in advance. I paid for the food, wincing when it cost $98. I took the bags to my old truck and started it. I looked down at my small baby bump. I knew I needed to get a job, maybe even two. I frowned as I pulled into Mike Newton's family-owned store. There had offered me a job before, but I politely declined. That was in the beginning of the summer, and I had wanted to spend time with Edward this summer. "Hello, Bella," Mrs. Newton said, almost as soon as I walked in. Mrs. Newton, is it possible I could still get that job?" I asked in a shy voice. She smiled brightly at me and nodded. She held one finger up and walked away. When she returned, she held a hideous blue vest. She handed it to me. And I gladly accepted. I would do anything for my babies. When I got to the hotel, I took all my bags up. Though I was happy with my job at Newton's, I was afraid I would need more money. I walked down to the restaurant area of the hotel. The owner of the hotel was standing at the seating booth, smiling politely at me. I walked over to her. Mrs. Vargo, do you have any open jobs here? If even for a few hours a week?" I asked her. She nodded at me. "Yes, I actually need some help. I could hire you to work every Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday from 6 to 10. The pay is pretty good, $13 an hour." I almost squealed from being so happy. I thanked her, and walked upstairs. It was going to be hard. I was going to work at the Newtons on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So my only day off would be Sunday. I would gladly give up Sundays if it would help my children. As I put the groceries away, I thought about Charlie. I haven't heard from him in a month. I shrugged, trying not to cry as I started making dinner. 2 months later, it was Saturday night, and I was just finishing my shift at the restaurant when Jacob walked in. He smiled at me, and sat on the stool close to the counter. Just like he does almost every day, when he comes to visit me. The jobs were going great. I wasn't spending too much money, because all I needed to buy was food. I made around $350 a week. I usually only spent around $50 a week. This of course was for gas, food, and everything else I need to live. Every extra penny I had went straight to my bank account. Edward's paw. The airplane was just about to land when I gently shook Bella awake. She groaned, and I laughed a little bit. She grumpily looked up at me, and I kissed her forehead. She smiled slightly at me. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. "The plane is just landing, love. As soon as we leave the airport we will get you some food. And then we will take the family boat to the island," I told her, smiling still. Her stomach growled at the sound of food, and I couldn't help but laugh. 1 hour later, we were stepping out of the cab. The driver was instructed to wait for us as we ate at McDonald's. Of course, I wouldn't be eating, but I didn't want to mention that. I told Bella we could eat anywhere she wanted, and of course she would pick here. She walked right up to the only open register. She didn't even look at the menu before ordering. "Hi, I would like 2 Big Macs, 2 large fries, a cinnamon bun, 1 8-piece chicken nuggets, and a Diet Coke," she said, blushing deeply. My eyes widened, and I had to seriously hold back a laugh. The man at the counter looked at her like she was crazy, but rung her up anyway. "That will be $19.51 please," he said. She reached into her purse, but I slipped him a 20 before she could even get the money out. She gave me a dirty look, but moved over to the waiting area. She smiled when they called her order and I grabbed the tray. She led us to a table and I set the food in front of her. She grabbed 1 Big Macs, and almost ate the whole thing at once. 20 minutes later she was done, and she looked at me sheepishly. I just laughed and took her hand as we walked to the taxi. When we got to the dock, her eyes widened when she saw the boat. Boat wasn't an accurate word, yacht would do the trick. I smiled sweetly at her and I set the bags down and then lifted her into the boat. She looked up at the sky. It was around noon, so the sun was shining brightly. She grinned as both of our skin started to glow. I looked at her with amazement. She looked even more beautiful when she was sparkling. I shouldn't be surprised by this, because she is always shocking me in some way. I held her hand as I led her to steer the boat. Alice paused. It was around noon. Yesterday, we got a lot accomplished. The house has 3 bedrooms, so 3's a lot of stuff to get. I called the group together for a meeting. Today, the boys were going to install all the plumbing and electricity, while me and Rosalie touch up the painting and start planning where everything will go. Esme will go shopping and get all the furniture. As in couches, chairs, a bed, curtains, a computer desk and ECT. She will also be shopping for all the kitchen and bathroom appliances we need. She will make it so that they are delivered tomorrow morning. Tomorrow, the boys will do all the kitchen cabinets, as well as the countertops. Us ladies are going to set up all the furniture and kitchen appliances. Okay everyone, off to work, I said happily, and everyone laughed while walking out the door. Esme beamed at me before pulling away. She loves to design houses. While me and Rose were painting the nursery, we were randomly talking. The day after tomorrow, me and you are going to go shopping to get Bella a completely new wardrobe. We're going to keep her old stuff too, but she needs everything. Lingerie, underwear, bras, tank tops, hoodies, sweaters, baby dolls, skirts, dresses, shoes, makeup, jeans. That's when Rosalie stopped me. Okay, I get it. She screamed in my face, and we both laughed. We were making the nursery an exact copy of how Bella had it at Charlie's. She designed it herself and it is special to her. The only different thing was that there was going to be a closet in the room that had everything and more that you would need for raising 10 babies. There is going to be so much clothes, stuffed animals, formula, bottles, and other necessities in there to supply a third world country. I know I might be overdoing it a little bit, but that's who I am. This is the only chance our family has to have babies, and they're going to be so spoiled. I'm going to teach my niece and nephew about fashion before Bella can. It's bad enough that Bella hates shopping, but her kids will not. I had brought everything from the nurseries at Charlie's to the new house. We obviously had to repaint the room though. I had pre-ordered all kinds of baby supplies on the computer a few days ago. 3 hours later, the boys were done with the plumbing and were just starting with the electrical stuff. Esme had still not returned, but I have had numerous visions about her walking around, shopping and smiling so brightly. I was happy that our mother found happiness in simple tasks. I had wanted to help with the furniture, but I wanted to make Esme feel important. We were putting so much work into this house, but we knew Bella and Edward would appreciate it. I was also glad that they went away. They needed some alone time. I smiled at the thought as I walked over to check on the boys. Bella's paw. I was simply amazed by the Cullen yacht. Of course, I should have expected this. I was sitting in a comfortable chair near the where Edward was steering the boat, when he pointed to an island. Look over there, love, that is Isle Esme. I smiled. All the Cullens were so generous when they gave gifts. Edward gave me a crooked smile before turning around. It seemed like only seconds when we were pulling up to a large dock. Edward lifted me out of the boat and continued on a stone walkway leading to a huge beach house. It was even bigger than the Cullens' house in Forks, and that's hard to beat. I looked at it with wide eyes while Edward opened the door and flipped on a light. It was humid in there. Edward smiled apologetically at me. Don't worry, love, as soon as I get back from getting the luggage I will turn the air conditioning on. I smiled and nodded. He set me down on one of the couches and went to get our luggage. I wasn't surprised when he walked in the door, less than 2 minutes later, with every single suitcase in his arms. He carried them off down the hallway and came back out to where I was. He grabbed my hand and pulled me to a bedroom with blue walls and a huge canopy bed. All of the sheets and pillows were a light blue, and I smiled. Why don't you freshen up and then we can take a swim? I promise you, the water is not cold in the ocean here. I nodded at him and walked towards the bathroom. I had wanted Edward ever since he came back, and I was going to get what I wanted today. The only hard part was going to be to convince him it won't hurt the babies. I had already talked to Carlisle about this, much to my embarrassment. He had told me it was perfectly fine, actually normal to be feeling a lot of lust. I blushed at the thought as I brushed my hair. All of the hair on my body had stopped growing, and my legs would forever be perfectly smooth, so I didn't need to worry about shaving. I walked out of the bathroom and opened up one of the suitcases Alice had packed for me. Oh my God, it was all skimpy bathing suits and lingerie. I smiled slightly as I put on a blue bikini. My breasts had always been small, but now they were pretty big. I waddled out of the bathroom and onto the beach. There was Edward in all his glory, standing in the water waist deep, while the sun shined brightly at him and made his skin sparkle. This of course meant that mine was too, but I wasn't paying any attention to that. Edward paused. As I turned around to look at Bella, my eyes went wide. She looked absolutely sexy. I had to shake my head slightly to clear my thoughts. She looked shyly at me, and I told her to come closer. As soon as she was close enough, I grabbed her into my arms and kissed her passionately. She returned the kiss with the same amount of fire. I pulled away and looked her in the eyes. Edward, I talked to Carlisle, and he said it was okay for us to have sex. She said, blushing the deepest red. I tried not to smile and said, Bella love, I too have talked to Carlisle. He assured me that everything would be fine. The choice is yours, my darling. She looked incredulously at me and screamed, then what are we waiting for? I laughed as I ran at vampire speed into the house. Jasper's paw. I laughed as my wife ran around Edward and Bella's house. The people from the store had just delivered all the things we bought yesterday. The whole time, she followed them, pointing to where things went. I felt so bad for them. I gave them each a $2,000 tip. I smiled when their eyes went wide. I felt all the emotions in the house. Emmett was enthusiastic, big surprise. Carlisle, Esme, and Rosalie were feeling useful and happy. And Alice was ecstatic. I was happy to be helping Edward and Bella. I hope that they're having fun on their vacation because after the babies are born, they're going to be busy. Alice kissed me on the cheek before calling Emmett and Carlisle over to where we were. Okay boys, today you guys are doing the cabinets and countertops. Be careful, and set everything right so that we don't have to redo it. I told them. They all nodded and went off to work. I smiled at my petite wife. She was the best thing that ever happened to me. Everyone in our family had a different kind of love. Rosalie and Emmett passion. Carlisle and Esme simple adoration. Bella and Edward there wasn't even a word to describe their love. And as for me and Alice, we had the kind of love that we didn't always have to be intimate, like Emmett and Rosalie. Just staring into each other's eyes made us happy. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Bella's paw. When I awoke, I was lying across Edward's chest. He seemed to know I was awake because he kissed my forehead gingerly. Last night had been one of the rare nights that I had slept. I peeked up at Edward and he smiled crookedly at me. I couldn't help but giggle. This was only the second day here, and I had accomplished my goal. I was staring into Edward's eyes when my stomach growled rather loudly. I sighed in frustration. My appetite ruined everything. Edward just laughed while I glared at him. Breakfast time for the sort of human, he said, and I continued to glare. I jumped out of bed and ran into the kitchen. I sat on one of the high stools and waited for Edward. He arrived not 2 seconds after I sat. He wasn't used to my speed. I know he sat in the bed for a few seconds thinking about it. What would you like for breakfast, love? He asked, smiling at me. I just shrugged. I would eat whatever he made me. As long as my morning supper of blood was the appetizer. I know I should be disgusted with myself. I was still part human. And I was drinking blood daily. At least it wasn't human blood. Eggs would be good, but whatever you feel like making. I need my thermos of blood. He just nodded his head and continued poking around in the fridge. I laughed at his concentrated face and he looked at me funny. I just giggled and shook my head. I rubber my stomach and the babies kicked. Edward's head shot up and he was in front of me in a second. He placed his hands on my stomach. Just under 2 weeks, my little angels, and I will finally meet you. Be good for your mother. I love you. I was suddenly struck with emotion. I loved him so much. I pulled his face to mine and kissed him, and he returned with a sweet kiss. Rosalie. If I had to hear Alice ramble on any longer, I was going to snap. I was already highly annoyed that Emmett tore my favorite lingerie last night. She was babbling on and on about clothes while Esme helped us set up the furniture. I had very low patience today. Perhaps I was just anxious for the babies to be born. I know I wasn't nice to Bella before, but I had a reason. I didn't think she should just give up her whole life for Edward. She has everything that I wanted. Actually, it was only one thing. To be able to have a baby. I wanted nothing more in my human life than to have a child, and I suffer as an immortal because I cannot have children. Of course, I loved Emmett more than anything in the world, but I would trade it all for a family. I know that's selfish, but that's who I am. I am vain, confident, and beautiful. I am Rosalie Hale. Everything likes to think that I am so pig-headed, because I am beautiful, but that's not right. I am so because I need to comfort myself in some way. Of course it pleases me that everyone, male, mortal or not, watched me when I walk by. I am so happy that everyone finds me so attractive. Because in reality, beauty means nothing to me. It's just one of the few things that I am grateful for. It won't get me a child, and that's what I want. I would love for me and Emmett to adopt, but it's too risky. The child will know we're different, and then eventually they will find out we're vampires. And it will be death or immortality for them too. I cannot damn another person to this life, as I so selfishly did with Emmett. The next day Alice Pav. The house was basically finished. It needed a lot more decorating, but all the main stuff was done. The boys are taking a 24-hour hunting trip and us ladies are going shopping. I was so excited. I was shopping for Bella. Her house was nowhere near as big as our mansion, but I knew she would love it. She always preferred small and simple. Emmett wanted to add a couple 100 square feet, a pool, and 3 more floors. But I convinced him they would like it better this way. Convince isn't the right word. We argued for hours until Renesmee finally intervened. The walk-in closet was huge. Bigger than the bedroom, and I was thrilled. Edward already had clothes, so I am not worried about his. But Bella had barely any clothes before, and any clothes she has now are stretched out. I laughed when we got to the mall, and Rosalie and Renesmee groaned. Bella's Pav. We were leaving the island tomorrow, and I was excited. While I enjoyed our time here, I wanted to see my little angels. I had just over 8 days until they were born. Edward and I were currently laying on a hammock by the beach, enjoying the perfect moment. As the baby's due date came closer and closer, I found myself more vampire than human. I drank a thermos of booze at least 3 times a day. I was slightly worried about the baby's eating habits. If they thirsted for blood this much inside of the womb, they would probably want even more once they were out. Carlisle had everything set up for the birth alreist, just to make sure everything goes smoothly. Edward was so worried about the baby's coming early that he had Carlisle come to the island 2 days ago just to give me a checkup. It didn't help that he could hear my sluggish heartbeat get slower and slower by the hour. We both knew it would stop completely sometime soon. I was afraid of my newborn years, mostly that I wouldn't be able to see my babies. That would be the worst part. Renesmee Pav. I smiled as we added the finishing touches onto Edward and Bella's house. It would be nice for them to have a little normality when everything else was crazy. This had been a hell of a year. First, Edward falls in love with Bella and finally chooses to accept it. The second she walked in the door, I knew that I had another daughter. Shortly after, there was the huge fight with James. Normally I am not one for violence, but he attacked my family and got what he deserved. After a wonderful summer, Bella's birthday came around. As soon as Jasper tried to TTACK Bella, I knew everything would be different. We had to leave a precious family member behind and it hurt. I feel so bad that Bella was pregnant. She was left all alone, even her parents turned her away. I can sympathize with her though. When I was pregnant my husband left me. I didn't truly love him, but it still hurt. The only hope I had was my child. And then when my son died I couldn't take it. There was nothing in the world left for me. I am forever grateful that Carlisle saved me. I would love to have a child of my own, but I can make do with my adopted children. And the best thing is that now I will have 2 grandchildren to spoil. I never thought there would be a chance for the Cullens to have a baby. Emmett Pav. Everyone went back to the house to relax and prepare for Eddie and Bella to come home. Rosie went shopping, so I am all alone. I laughed evilly as I unlocked the door to Eddie and Bella's house. I was going to get sweet revenge on Edward for damaging my baby. When we first got back, Edward was in such a rush to get to Bella's house that he crashed into my Jeep. He had left already and Renesmee saw the mess and made me clean it up. I smirked as I slid the box of pictures under the bed. Bella would find them when she was cleaning. Edward will never know what hit him. Edward's paw. I sighed as I lifted the last bag into the boat. Today was the day we were leaving Isle Esme. Bella is lying on the hammock looking at the ocean. I know she doesn't want to leave. The truth is that I don't either. But I know that soon after we leave this island everything will change. In just a few short days Bella and I would be parents. A couple of months ago I would have laughed at the idea of me ever being a father. But the due date is nearing and I am terrified. Terrified of being a horrible father. Terrified of hurting them. And terrified that they will resent me because they will not be human. They will never have a chance to live a normal human life. They will be immortal by the time they were 17. I resent myself more and more as I think of the things that they won't be able to do. They won't be able to play sports. They won't be able to go to school until they are mature enough to understand the gravity of our secret. They won't even be able to get a pet because one of us might attack it. I sometimes wonder if it's a terrible thing to bring up a child in our family. The child would never have a normal life. They would be plenty loved of course, but they would crave a normal life. Bella and I will have to work extra hard to make sure they don't feel like they are missing out on things. I pinched the bridge of my nose so that I could focus as I walked over to Bella. I smiled down at her and knelt down next to the hammock. Bella, my love, I know how much fun we had here, but it's time to go. I promise we will be back here soon. And next time we can bring our precious children with us. I kissed her stomach and offered her my hand. She smiled at me and took my hand. I gently pulled her up and lifted her into my arms. She glared at me and said, "Edward, I'm really not that clumsy that I can't walk to the boat by myself." Instead of answering her, I smiled crookedly at her and chuckled slightly. When he hand collided with the side of my head I decided it was time to apologize. "I'm sorry Bella, I know that you're perfectly capable of walking to the boat. But I enjoy carrying you. Anything I can do for you or my miracle children I will," I told her. This statement softened her right up. And she brought her mouth to mine for a brief moment. I set her down carefully and walked over to remove the anchor. Jacob paw. Damn it all, I thought as I did a lap around the res. Sam had doing extra patrols since Bella and Edward would be arriving home shortly. He wanted to make sure Bella and the babies would be safe. They are returning from their little vacation soon. Who the hell does Cullen think he is? He has sex with Bella and then leaves right after. And he supposedly didn't know she was pregnant. Whatever. Bella and I were friends before he left. But after, we became closer. I was there for her even when her parents left her. The more I got to know Bella, the more I liked her. Then like turned into love. And now I'm deeply and utterly in love with her. I was going to tell her. I was going to propose. I wanted to be her husband. And I wanted to help her raise her children. I know it would have been unconventional. A werewolf stepdad and a vampire mother with twins who were half vampire and half human. I really thought I had a chance. I know I'm just a kid. But that doesn't mean anything to me. I also know that I didn't imprint on her. That was one of the things that was holding me back. I was battling with myself. I knew that if I imprinted that I would have no choice but to leave her. But I was convinced that I wouldn't imprint. I could have made her happy. I thought she was just beginning to heal. But now it doesn't matter. Cullen is back and he will never leave. Especially now that he knows she's having his kid. We made a new treaty. And I have no choice but to honor it. I would always have to be around her. I would have to see their happy little family all the time. I would have to see the love in her eyes when she looked at him. And it's not fair. He doesn't deserve any of it. Bella should be mine. His kids should be mine. Now that I had to be around, I will make sure that he never hurts her. And if he does, first, I will kill him. And then I will be there for Bella. I will always be waiting in the wings. It was just now that I realized I am not alone. Paul is on duty too. He laughed in his head. Good to know you finally noticed I'm here. I heard all of that by the way. And I thought Leah was bitter. He finished with a laugh. I growled at him. He should know not to mess with me now. Thank God he got the message. I didn't feel like killing Paul today. The end. Thanks for watching.